What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. I'm your host, Ben Stahl, and joining me today is, of course, my number one regular, Sarah Moore. Sarah, welcome back.
Good to be back.
So this is episode 32, and you may be thinking, wait, what? How are you not further along? Episode 31 was like way back in May when Ben and Gary talked about Justice League. I decided it was kind of cool idea to just maybe take a little time off. I've been vaccinated for a while. The world's kind of opening up. I've been seeing some people live. I haven't seen Sarah live yet, but it'll happen eventually. I'll actually be able to see friends, and it's great. And also, I've got my sister here, and now that means we have 4 cats, which means I have 4 times the hassle before I record episodes to deal with them. So, in fact, I think I only locked one in a room. So if I have to get up and leave, it's because I'm taking care of a whiny cat. So, yeah, we're back. And before we jump into the big meat and potatoes of this episode, we're going to talk about what's been going on in the news. So let's talk about the box office. A little itty bitty movie opened up recently that no one has been looking forward to seeing at all. I'm just kidding. Black Widow finally opened 1 year after it had originally been set to debut, and it set a pandemic-era box office record with a 80 million opening weekend and a 200 million worldwide take at the box office. Does that seem a little low? Yeah, sure. But remember, we are still in a pandemic. The world may be opening up, but if you're out there unvaccinated, not wearing masks, shame on you, blah, blah, blah. Please get yourself fixed up if you can. And also, Black Widow is on Disney Plus. So
yeah, that's what I was does that count like the premium? Is the premium thing that people paid for Disney Plus counted in the box office, or is that separate?
I do not believe it is counted in the box office. I believe that is counted on its own, which means that Black Widow has no doubt probably exceeded the 100 million mark if you factor in Disney Plus premium purchases, I think. But I don't know. I personally have no interest to watch it at home. Did you watch it yet, Sarah?
I did. Me and Dustin went and saw it for our first trip back in the theater to celebrate our anniversary. So I've been back to the theater once now to see Black Widow. And it was kind of weird because there was only like a few other people in the theater, which seemed really weird for the second day that a big movie like that was open. I mean, it was in the middle of, it was like a matinee, but it was definitely weird to have such a small group in the theater for I think it was like the Saturday after it opened. So
yeah, in my experience so far, and I've only been to one evening show and a couple of matinees, but in my experience so far, the matinees are as dead as they usually are, even pre-pandemic. But yeah, we'll be talking about Black Widow at some point later. I want to get a couple of people on to talk about that because it's such a big thing. But let's move on. Let's talk about some more Disney stuff here. Disney's live action Little Mermaid has officially wrapped production. No, according to IMDb, no release date on that yet. I'm sure they're, biding their time and looking at their calendar and thinking, when can we open this? They may not even had this perfectly scheduled the way they usually do because of the pandemic. But fingers crossed, the Little Mermaid fares a little bit better with critics and audiences than the last handful of live action remakes because it sounds like they've been getting a little monotonous. Mulan in particular really got slammed by critics and audiences.
Yeah, I still haven't watched that.
I haven't either, and it's free.
To watch it.
It's free now on Disney Plus, so no excuses. But let's talk about some DC stuff here. I'm excited about this one, and good reason to hang on to HBO Max. Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad spinoff starring John Cena, has wrapped production. I mean, come on, it's another James Gunn project. It's a spinoff of Suicide Squad, which looks really fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Curse you, HBO, for actually making good things. and making me subscribe to you.
You're probably just going to want to hang on to HBO. There's
I know.
pretty much always really good stuff on there.
Yep. Yep. Unless my credit card is compromised again and I lose it that way, because that's how I lost it last time, and just didn't bother to re-up my subscription. So I'll probably stuck with it for a while. The Emmy nominations were announced recently, but the only thing I really want to talk about, because I think it's so funny, is that Don Cheadle was nominated for his performance in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And you're probably thinking, wait, what? He's in it for he's in one episode for maybe 3 minutes. And Don Cheadle is as confused as everyone else. So I don't know. We're gonna talk a bit about when we get into Loki. There is actually a character in Loki who appeared in the last episode for a significant chunk, who I feel should have been nominated in place of Don Cheadle. But we'll get to that in a minute. Speak more Marvel stuff. WandaVision's Matt Shakman, who directed that series, is set to direct the next Star Trek, which has been fast-tracked by Paramount. No clue if they're going to bring back the most recent cast. Star Trek's kind of been in the movies, at least, have kind of been in limbo for a while now that Chris Pine is worth considerably more as an actor than he was back in 2016. And pretty much most of that cast, too, is probably going to cost a lot more. Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban. Carl Urban's got so much more exposure now from The Boys. Simon Pegg is Simon Pegg. You know, they're all doing well. So I don't know. Did they bring back that cast? Did they completely reboot it again? Who knows? But it's Star Trek. I'll go see it. Netflix. I'm going to talk about Netflix here real quick. They are reportedly going to be adding video games to their platform, which should be interesting. Streaming video games is sort of the next frontier in that genre of entertainment, and everyone who's tried it so far it's kind of not been the best experience for most people. So can one of the premier movie streamers make it work? I don't know.
And I've seen a few people too be like, so does that mean they're going to raise their prices? And if they are, can I opt out if I don't want video games? So that'll be interesting to see how that works. That's
actually a good point. If they add video games, I would bet that they would add it as like another tier, stream movies and games. Because obviously, there's me who would, maybe pay more if they were streaming games, but I don't know. I've got an Xbox and a PlayStation, so I don't need that from Netflix. Unless Netflix like really starts producing their own video game content that's incredibly good. But I don't know. I don't know how this is going to roll. We'll see. All right. Let's shift over to Dexter here for a minute. Jennifer Carpenter has been confirmed to return to Dexter. I don't remember what her ultimate fate was at the end of the series because I didn't. Okay, well, she died.
She died. And it was very controversial, and that finale is pretty hated, I think, partially because she died.
Well, gosh, who knows? Maybe they're just going to be retconning a ton of that show because, we talk about it a lot in that show. Everyone says stop at season 4, which is what I did.
I've heard some things that have kind of suggested that they may be kind of pretending like the last season didn't happen, but interesting.
Well,
it's pretty universally hated. I mean, I would say on a level of Game of Thrones finale, Dexter finale is pretty hated.
Well, they definitely have to be retconning something because this is news from a little while back. But John Lithgow was also supposed to be coming back, and he definitely died at the end of season 4.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Um, let's talk about Disney Plus here really quick with Willow. Director Jonathan Entwistle has left Willow. He is the second director to drop out of the Disney Plus series after John M. Chu. What does that mean? I don't know, but they've got a cast, they're good to go. They just need to have a director on there to get them going. So fingers crossed. I don't think it has a release date set. Hopefully it's something that will come to be, because it is, of course, one of the few beloved Lucasfilm properties that isn't Star Wars or Indiana Jones. So here's hoping we can get that, because
it's a very good sign when directors are dropping like flies.
Yeah. Let's go back to HBO Max. And speaking of Game of Thrones, HBO Max is apparently developing 2 Game of Thrones animated spin-offs. What do you think about that, Sarah?
Animated. Yeah, I have weird feelings about that. I mean, I can see where maybe it could be interesting. I definitely feel like animation's an interesting choice for Game of Thrones because I feel like of all fantasy series, Game of Thrones is rooted much more in like actual history. So it's like an interesting choice to do an animated version, but I don't know.
I find it interesting when properties that are fairly well grounded in a certain sort of gritty reality get an animated spin-off or an animated series that's sort of within their storytelling, because like the Clone Wars stuff for Star Wars or the Bad Batch is it's definitely geared toward a younger audience, and doesn't tonally at all feel like the Star Wars films. I think we're probably going to get one that feels tonally consistent with the series here next month with Marvel's What If. But really, it's strange to me that, how do you do an animated Game of Thrones that feels tonally consistent with what they have done so far with the series? And I don't know. I also don't watch a lot of animated shows that are geared toward adults that aren't clearly comedies. Like Archer is what I think of when I think of adult animation, or the Venture Brothers, or Rick and Morty. And it's those are all goofy shows that are. So we'll see.
I'm curious. Is it going to go? Have you ever watched the Castlevania on Netflix?
I've seen a handful of episodes of that, and that is definitely proof
that they'll go more in that kind of. Because I'm sure younger people watch that, but I would say that's definitely probably geared more toward like older teenagers or adults. I mean, it's pretty gory for an animated show. It's got pretty adult themes in it. So maybe they're going more for. I do have to say I would be very curious to see what the art style is going to be.
Yep. So we'll find out. Yet another reason to hold on to that HBO Max subscription. Finally, back to our last bit of news, and it's another Netflix bit. Season 2 of Bridgerton the production has been put on hold because of COVID concerns. That's right. Remember when I said earlier that we're not out of the woods yet? Well, guess what? Productions can still be put on hold. Robert Pattinson, the Batman himself, can still get sick with COVID. These things happen. So, mask up. If you are around a bunch of people in public places, get vaccinated. If you are able, please do that. I am eagerly awaiting the day that I really want, by the time Spider-Man Far From Home is out, to be in an absolutely packed movie theater with a screaming audience, because that's probably the biggest movie I can think of this year where I just want to be around people screaming it at the screen. So, all right. Before we jump in to Loki, Sarah, have you been watching anything cool, anything exciting, brand new, That isn't Black Widow or Loki.
Yes, actually, I just finished up this morning watching a show on HBO Max called Mayor of Easttown, which I think has been out for a while, but it's a very like gritty crime drama with Kate Winslet in the lead, and she's like I think they're in some kind of a small town in Philadelphia, and she's like a cop there, and investigating the murder of a young woman and disappearance of a few others, and her life, her life's kind of a mess. She's like definitely like a really strong, ballsy woman, but really, really good show. If you like dark, kind of gritty crime dramas, it was very good, very well acted. Lots of good twists and turns in it. And then on the flip side, we watched the movie Luca on Disney Plus when my stepdaughter was here, so and that was cute.
I still haven't watched Luca, and I actually really haven't watched much of anything. But my problem with Luca is that I feel like Disney never really pushed it very hard. Like,
yeah, I agree.
You see them promoting, their Star Wars stuff and their Marvel stuff very heavily for Disney Plus. But with the exception of Soul and Raya, they really haven't been pushing their own original animated features, which is kind of a shame.
I think it's a Pixar one too, and it didn't have like the premiere access. Like it was just available to anyone with Disney Plus right away.
Yeah, it's free. It's free with your subscription, everybody.
Yeah.
So Luca's out.
Not extra.
If you weren't aware, Luca is available on Disney Plus now. It's not in theaters, so check that out on Disney Plus. Like I said, I haven't been watching too much of anything new. I occasionally throw on some episodes of Taskmaster while I'm just working around the house. I did, and this is I can't really recommend this to anybody because it's inside a video game. But I finally jumped into a game I stopped playing 5 years ago called Quantum Break, and it's a weird experiment where part of the game is a video game, and then part of it is a TV show that you can watch. And it's actually got pretty good production values, and it stars, it's got Sean Ashmore from the X-Men films, and Aidan Gillen from Game of Thrones. Lance Reddick is in it, and Dominic Monaghan. So, like, it's a really weird time travel, time loop type of show, which is appropriate given what we're about to talk about. So if you have an Xbox and you want to try something really trippy that's both a game and a live action show, give Quantum Break a shot. It kind of got overlooked back when it was originally released, and that's a shame. I think it was quite good. All right. It's time to talk about the God of Mischief. Yes, Loki, which when all these Disney Plus Marvel shows were announced, I think Loki pretty much topped everyone's most anticipated list. I know it topped yours, Sarah, because you've said as much several times. So, and obviously that's because we all have come to love Loki over the course of his many appearances in the films, and we wanted to know what is in store for Loki. Especially after we knew this wasn't going to be the original Loki. This was going to be this strange new Loki who had stolen the time stone, or the space stone. Yeah. The space stone. Yeah. We want to know what happened to him. And now we know. So, Sarah, overall, what did you think of Loki?
It was really, like, it was definitely not what I expected, but it was still pretty fun to watch. It was very twisty and turny. I definitely felt like there was a lot of fun stuff in there, but at the same time, I felt like there was some stuff I was really confused by, and I've kind of like gone and found articles to explain it a little more, so I get some of it more now. But I was definitely like kind of lost and confused in some parts of it. But I thought it was also really, really fun to watch, and really different from the last two Marvel. Like each Marvel show has been so different in tone so far, which is really cool. But yeah, we really don't know what to expect.
I'm going to talk about I'll just go into the episode breakdown. We can kind of talk about each episode here. So, episode 1, Glorious Purpose. I loved this episode. I think I will say I think this episode unfortunately set kind of a high bar for the series. But the setup for everything, just the introduction to the TVA and meeting Owen Wilson, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, and all these new characters, that was an absolute joy. And getting to see like the introduction of like Miss Minutes, I thought was a lot of fun. Having an animated character in the MCU for, well, it's not really the first time they've done that. There's that little bit in Infinity War where Doctor Strange conjures the animated butterflies. But this is the first time we've had like a real animated character for the MCU. And if you look up the trivia, it is inspired by exactly who you think it is, Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park, which makes total sense. But yeah, I think the production design for the TVA was just so cool. It's so different from anything we've seen in Marvel. And in that sense, it felt a lot like WandaVision, because WandaVision gave us, this weird reality in the sitcom world, whereas Falcon and Winter Soldier felt very Marvel. And this was just like something, again, completely new. It actually gave me a lot of, I'm going to talk games again here, but I felt like it was in the middle of the Fallout universe, with this sort of like world that sort of is stuck simultaneously in the past, but with very futuristic technology. So that was really cool. And the cliffhanger for that one was rather terrifying, and led me to believe that we were going to get a little bit more of a real villain in Sylvie than we ultimately got. But that's fine, because the villain payoff at the end was really good. How did you like the first episode?
I thought the first episode was great. I mean, it definitely like gave Tom Hiddleston like the gamut of stuff to play in like one episode. And just watching like just him kind of being confronted with like what happened to like what would have happened to him like had he stayed in his timeline was pretty nuts. I thought Owen Wilson was like such a great addition. He was like so Owen Wilson-y, but it fit like so well. And yeah, I too also, I felt like in that episode I was expecting like, oh, this is gonna be something really dark. Like there's gonna be a really dark, I got a very like, I don't know if you ever watched that show Heroes that was on a long time ago. But it almost gave me vibes of like that really dark like villain in that. So I agree. But yeah, that was definitely like not where they went, which I think was one of the things that kind of confused me a little bit. But it was I got on the wavelength with them, but I was definitely expecting something a little different, the direction that episode was going. And I felt like this series, it kept kind of leading you one direction, but then it would subtly kind of go this way, which probably makes sense for Loki, but
a little bit. I definitely want to point out one of the highlights of that episode was the big twist when Loki opens up the desk and finds just a stash of Infinity Stones, and
he use them as paperweight.
we suddenly realize that powerful as the Infinity Stones may be, in the great grand scheme of things, they may really truly amount to nothing. And that time and the whole concept of the multiverse may be the true power that Loki has been seeking all along. Episode 2, The Variant. Again, I really liked this episode, not quite as much as the first, just because it lacked that sort of the awe of meeting, all these new characters for the first time and experiencing the TVA. But it still had that air of mystery about it, because we still had not yet met Sylvie. And we still weren't quite sure whose allegiance Loki was going to run with. So we got to have a lot more of the Loki Mobius interplay. And again, you talked about Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson was just a hoot across this entire series. But then we got to the end, and we finally got to meet the Loki variant, who turns out to be Sylvie, and she just prunes a bunch of timelines. And for me, one of the questions I've had for the rest of this series was, what was that supposed to do? I never understood why she was pruning random timelines. Obviously, her ultimate goal was to get the TVA.
But I almost even forgot about that part.
Yeah. So yeah, what did you think of episode 2?
Episode 2, like, I'm having kind of a hard time remembering it. I think it definitely didn't stick out quite as much. And I felt like it was one of the ones that made me a little more confused about like where the show was going after the first episode. But then I think it picked up again after that. I feel like that episode might have been kind of the low point of the series.
Interesting. You and I have very different opinions on where this is going to go here, because episode 3, episodes 3 and 4 actually, for me, were the low point of the series. But with episode 3, I thought there was some great stuff there. This episode 3 really starts to dive into who Sylvie is. For me, episode 3 drags when they are trying to find ways to escape the planet. But it really picks up when they're just sitting together and talking. And we're really starting to dig into both who is Sylvie and who is this Loki, and how is this Loki different from what we've come to expect, or how is this Loki exactly the same as what we've come to expect.
I definitely in that one had the feeling of just like, of course Loki would have a romance with the female version of himself. Like,
yep.
Of course, like that he would be drawn to like himself. It was brilliant.
So yeah, that was sort of my take on episode 3. Like, yeah, the stuff on the train I thought was absolutely brilliant. But unfortunately it was sandwiched in between I don't know, action scenes that just were there to pad the whole thing out. Mainly, maybe it's because they weren't going. Maybe it's because they didn't have anyone that they were fighting against except each other. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of felt like clearly they're gonna get out of here, so it's like, I don't know. It definitely felt like, I mean, I guess it was about like creating the Nexus event or something, but it definitely felt like you knew they were gonna get out of there. They weren't gonna like explode with the planet. So.
Yeah, there's still 3 episodes to go. Ain't going off yet. Which leads us into episode 4, the Nexus event. Because episode 3, as you very aptly pointed out, they were definitely showing signs that there was a romantic relationship going on there. More so, and then as many people pointed out on social media, like, if you think it's messed up for this show for Loki to be in love with a version of himself, you should really dig into the actual mythology, the actual Norse mythology, and see what Loki did there. Because you will definitely not be happy if this bugged you. You will not be happy to hear what Loki really had been up to. The Nexus event. Again, this for me was kind of a low point except until you get to the end of this episode, where you finally find out that the timekeepers aren't real. But this was kind of just a stagnant episode of Loki and Sylvie being trapped at the TBR and just kind of recapping a lot of what's gone on already.
Was episode 4 the one that had the Lady Sif cameo? I think.
Yes, that was fun.
I did like that.
That was nice. Yeah, it was good to see. It was good to see Jamie Alexander for the first time since she actually made an appearance on S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's right.
Like,
that was after.
So, yeah, she made an appearance after the Dark World, but Dark World was the last time we saw her in a proper film. So for some fans out there, it's probably been a very long time. And
well, it's probably good she wasn't in Ragnarok since all his friends were getting killed off.
Yeah. Side note, the last I heard, Sif is still supposed to be out there in the MCU. She survived the snap and is she's supposedly still out there. Was not there for Ragnarok, so congratulations on being one of the few Asgardian heroes who got to live. Oh, the other good thing that come out of Lamentis, although it didn't feel like it was quite as big of a drop as it should have been, was that everyone in the TVA is a variant. That's the big plot twist we got in that one, which leads into this episode 4 with Loki trying to convince everyone. And again, it just slowed down a lot until you got to that ending with the timekeepers. What did you think of that episode?
I think like the end kind of redeemed the rest of the episode for me, because so much happened at the end. Especially like Owen Wilson's character getting pruned and then Loki getting pruned, and like yeah, it was I felt like there was a lot happening at the end. So I think that kind of redeemed the episode for me. And I felt pretty sure when I was watching, okay, well, if they're pruning all these like main characters, they must not just die. There must be like something more to it. And also that was like the only one that had like a post-credit scene, which I was expecting more post-credit scenes in this series. But that was really, because I guess the last episode had something about him returning in season 2, but that was really the only episode that had a post-credit scene. And it was a really great post-credit scene.
It was. It leads right into episode 5. And for me, that post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, whatever we want to place it, kind of was the signal that the series was about to enter the territory I think that a lot of people had been hoping it would enter, where we get to see a lot of different Lokis. Well, to be fair, though, I didn't think... I don't know if anyone thought when this series started that it was going to be about different Lokis. I thought it was going to be more about time travel. So when it came to seeing a lot of different Lokis, it was definitely like, and this definitely paid off. I thought, is this where we finally get to see Vote Loki? And that character did show up in episode 5. Episode 5, Journey into Mystery, an appropriate title, as of course that is the name of one of the original Marvel comics. I think Journey into Mystery is the first appearance of Thor in Marvel Comics. So there's a little Easter egg there. So we meet a bunch of new Lokis in Journey into Mystery. Of course, the standout one being Richard Grant's classic Loki. But we also got Kid Loki, Boastful Loki, Vote Loki, a ton of other Lokis, and Alligator Loki.
The guy who saw him referred to as Croaky.
That's perfect. And not only that, we got to see Frog Thor.
I know, yeah.
Frog Thor, who was voiced by Chris Hemsworth. So there's that. He made it. He made it into the series. I enjoyed this episode for the most part. The only part that I felt kind of bogged everything down was once there were like a billion Lokis and they were all just fighting each other. And at one point I thought, okay, now we're just playing this for laughs.
It's pretty funny though that all the Lokis were betraying each other.
It is. I think though what I enjoyed most about that episode was like the tragic story of classic Loki and how he probably still would exist in his timeline, even though he wisely deviated in such a way that no one would care, but he got lonely. And that's the great tragedy of it, is Loki is traditionally a character who is alone by choice, but that was a great little story about how, you shouldn't always be alone, Loki, because eventually it is going to come back and you're going to feel bad about it. So I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, we met the sort of great guardian of the end of time, Alioth, and got to see a really cool enchantment scene. And that kind of led us right into episode 6. Do you have any other thoughts on episode 5? Because
I feel like episode 5 felt more like the right tone for me. I feel like this was a series that jumped around to different tones a lot, which isn't like a bad thing necessarily, but I feel like that's where sometimes I kind of got confused. But I felt like that felt more like it was in episode 5, felt more kind of like grounded in the Marvel world and grounded in like the Thor world we've seen so far. And I don't know, it just felt like more kind of tonally correct for Loki. And it kind of like, it was a little bit more, it felt like more of a clear direction of where the series was going. Although then I feel like it still kind of went in a different direction than I thought. But that, Loki, that's what Loki does. He always goes in a different direction than you think. So really, it was fitting.
Yeah, for me, I think this was the first episode to go someplace that I was hoping it would go, and I wish that the series had taken more time to go places like that with Loki. Like, I really had hoped that episode 3 and 4 would be more about Loki and Sylvie, like literally evading the TVA by hopping between different timelines or universes.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was stuff they showed in the trailer or in some of the promo material that never made it into the series. There's a picture of Loki standing in front of a movie theater in the 1970s that's playing Jaws, and that never happened. I want to see that. I want to see Loki in the 70s. Like, I want to see.
I feel like they missed an opportunity to do some kind of like fun, different time periods. And maybe they felt like they'd done that with WandaVision, but I feel like, I feel like seeing him in some different time period situations might have been interesting. So they did like a little bit with the TVA people going to weird different time periods, but I don't know.
Well, they also had that. What's the name of the famous criminal where he jumps out of the plane?
Oh,
real life criminal.
DB Cooper, I think.
Yeah,
he was DB Cooper. Yeah, like more stuff like that would have been fun. I do agree. I feel like they could have done some more fun stuff with him and Sylvie in the middle there, rather than a whole episode of them being kind of questioned by the TVA.
But we got what we got, and it led up to episode 6, which for a lot of people was a huge payoff. So for those of us who had sort of been in the know about certain villains and things that are going on, I would have been absolutely shocked if it hadn't been Kang. And then I was shocked because it was Kang, but it wasn't Kang. So for those of you who don't know your Marvel lore, Kang the Conqueror is an upcoming villain for the MCU who's going to be introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And it's a character who has mastery over time. And he's directly connected to Alioth. He's connected to Judge Renslayer. There were a lot of hints that this was going to be Kang the Conqueror. And then it was. But again, it wasn't. We also knew that from a while back that Jonathan Majors had been cast in Ant-Man and the Wasp as Kang the Conqueror. And there he was. And boy, oh boy, did he deliver. He should have gotten an Emmy nomination for that role. It was so fun. But it was kind of cool. It was like, he's not Kang. He's a variant of Kang. And the whole plot of this show has been he's pruning timelines so that Kang never exists, which makes so much more sense than like the absolute, stupid notion that they just need to keep the sacred timeline going because there can only be one timeline. How boring is that? It's so much more interesting to me that he's doing something very evil by restricting free will and killing an infinite number of beings in multiple universes, but he's doing it for the right that sounds so bad to put it that way, but yeah. It gets me really excited for what is coming up. And that ending, of course, where he who remains is killed is just, it's the setup. If Gary were here right now, we could say, Gary, remember when we were talking about when is it going to feel like we're in phase 4? Well, that was the moment right there when he who remains was killed. And all of a sudden, the sacred timeline branched off into so many multiverses that we are now going to be dealing with in future films.
I'm actually pretty surprised that they started phase 4 in one of the series. Like, I mean, that tells me they're taking the series really seriously. That it's not just like, something they're doing because they can to get more people to subscribe to Disney Plus for an extra buck. They actually are like, I mean, not that I felt like they'd wasted the last 2 series, but clearly they really are putting something into like these series, and they really they're not a separate entity from the movies. It's all gonna like tie together.
Yeah, this is really the first one where, based on what we already know about the upcoming films, we know is going to have an effect on other characters. It's crazy. It's very exciting. Yeah, shoot. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought.
Well, that's interesting too. I know we're not like delving into Black Widow in this one, but when we get there, I felt like there was something that happened in Black Widow that seemed to me like it's setting up a series that's happening down the line. So like it's interesting. It's like with then watching Loki, like right after that, like I'm seeing, so the series are gonna like weave into the movies, and the movies are gonna weave back into the series. It's definitely not going to be like a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and movies thing. They're really going to like fit together.
Yeah, that was really frustrating when S.H.I.E.L.D. sort of felt like it was going off and doing its own thing, and there wasn't really that integration. So yeah, we have that now, and it's going to be crazy because this whole multiverse thing is clearly setting up What If, it's setting up Doctor Strange, it's setting up Ant-Man. There's a lot that's going to come out of this. But we've talked a lot about the plot of the show. Let's talk about Loki himself. Let's talk about 2 different Lokis, because again, this is not the Loki that we came to love by the end. Well, not the end of Ragnarok, by the beginning of Endgame. Or nope, Infinity War. Wow.
Yeah, he was just mercilessly slaughtered.
Yep. This is a slightly different Loki, and I want to talk about how his character evolves in the films versus the show. Because it is different. In the films, there's still this even through Ragnarok, where he's allied with Thor, there's still this overall sense that he could be a big villain for people down the line. And his final turning point really wasn't until that moment in Infinity War, where he tries to save the universe from Thanos and pays the ultimate price. Whereas this new Loki gets his life thrown in his face in that first episode, and then gets thrown. The only other way he seems to get his life thrown in his face is by other variants of himself, with Sylvie and with classic Loki. And it's very interesting that the only way he seems to learn is still kind of narcissistic. He only learns from himself. And it's very fun to see him sort of not attached to Thor's hip for the first time, really. Because there's not a single movie appearance he's made that he's not pretty much there alongside Thor.
No, I mean, other than, him being the villain, I guess, in Avengers, he was doing something separate from Thor, but Thor was still there. But yeah, I mean, he's pretty much, I would agree. He's pretty much kind of been right there with Thor.
Yeah, it's really the first time we've where Loki's story is not intertwined with Thor's in any way, and I think that's good. I think it's good for the character because I've already talked about on past episodes about how it's going to be good in Love and Thunder to finally have a solo Thor movie in which Thor's journey is no longer going to be informed by what Loki does. Infinity War and Endgame were proof that it was time for Thor to move on from that relationship, and it is time for Loki to move on from his relationship with Thor in order for those characters to grow in meaningful ways. So yeah, and he found that, but again, he found it with himself in a weird way,
which is fitting. I mean, he is kind of a narcissistic character.
Oh, he's very narcissistic. Well, let's talk about Sylvie, because the further you get into the series, the more it kind of feels like this might not be Loki's story. It is certainly at least as much her story as it is his. Because at the end, who's the one who commits the great action that causes the multiverse to split up? It's her. She's the one who really put everything in action in the first place. If not for her, they would have the TVA would have caught variant Loki, brought him back, and just had him pruned. And
he'd be hanging out with the other Lokis.
He'd be hanging out with other Lokis. But her story of survival for all those years is really the backbone of what's going on in this series. Which is why the stuff on the train, I feel, is as good as it is because we unfortunately don't get a lot of time with Sylvie. But that doesn't mean that her character is in any way insignificant. What are your thoughts on Sylvie?
I think it's interesting. It's interesting that she's been really completely on her own for most of her life. And then you think about the Loki we know, like in the Marvel universe, our Tom Hiddleston's Loki. He's always trying to go off and do all this great stuff on his own, but he always has Thor there. He clearly had a close relationship with his mom. Even though those were troubled relationships, he hasn't really been alone consistently. She has really been alone and had to completely just depend on herself. And she was kind of ripped out of her home, the place she felt comfortable, and has been hiding for years and years and years. So it's interesting, psychologically, how the two present differently, and how she's really fighting for survival. She's not going to stop and consider because Loki's always kind of considering all the sides and what can I get the most out of, what's gonna suit me best. But I feel like she's just makes split decisions. So it makes sense that she would be the one that would go through with it and do the thing, because because that was her. I mean, she was very clear on her glorious purpose, Whereas Loki seems to change constantly, I would say, just kind of depending on what suits him better at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he goes from wanting the throne of Asgard to wanting Earth. And it's not even clear in the Dark World if Asgard, the throne of Asgard, is once again his goal, but he gets it by the end. So yeah, he's just constantly changing based on his situation because, you're right. He didn't have to worry about being alone growing up. He was, he may have had a crappy childhood and, but he was still a spoiled rich kid. There was nothing that
he has a lot more privilege than Sylvie.
Yeah.
He's more privileged.
Yeah, I mean, he basically had everything he could have wanted except the throne. And it's so interesting that she was taken, and her timeline was pruned, and she was meant to be pruned before really she had done anything bad. Like, there's some great theories out there that the reason that she was pulled, was because her Nexus event is that she was never going to become evil.
Interesting.
And that the reason
we don't really find out why she was. I don't recall that we really found out why she was taken out of her timeline.
If it's there, I don't recall it either.
Yeah, I don't think they just kind of came and grabbed her.
But I think it's interesting if that theory is what the writers were going with. It's interesting because if they were going to pull her because she was never going to become evil like Loki is supposed to, that's what made her evil. Was the TVA bumping in. I want to go back to Tom Hiddleston's Loki again real quick because I think there's something ultimately also tragic about, and I think what's so liberating about the end of this series is the concept of free will, is this sense at the beginning of the series that Loki is destined to always fail. And there's a tragedy in that, knowing that, you are not ever meant to succeed at anything you do in life, but you are only there to inspire others to be the best versions of themselves, which is great that we get the Avengers that way, but it is tragic because, we do get to see over the course of the films and this show, Loki as a character, and as bad as he can be, we empathize with him because, like, I think especially for those of us in our generation, for you, the early 80s, for me, the 90s, like, man, oh man, our generations have just been like told, yeah, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get the work done, and that's how you're going to succeed in life. And maybe that'd be true if we didn't have the burden of ridiculously high prices for houses or student loans, or these expectations that this is what you have to do to succeed, and there's a billion barriers in their way that we put there that we didn't have when we were your age. So I feel like I definitely empathize with Loki in that sense. Loki has so many barriers that are placed before him by fate in this case. And it's also interesting to note that everything that happened, at least all the way up through Endgame, suddenly it lacks the same drama. It's great. It's wonderful storytelling. But guess what, everyone? It was all meant to be. Because a wizard in his little tower has been messing around with everything and said, well, of course the Avengers are going to beat Loki. They're going to beat Ultron. They're going to beat Thanos. It's all working out according to my great grand plan. But now there's no great grand plan. So, yeah.
It definitely felt like the end had the last episode had very like Cabin in the Woods. Did you ever see that movie? It had very like Cabin in the Woods vibes to me. Like,
oh yeah.
Well, all the protections are gone now, so
Yep.
Let's see what happens.
So this is the third Disney Plus Marvel series so far. We've already talked about Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision. How would you compare this show to them? And I didn't ask this question in the itinerary, but I'm going to ask it now. How would you rank them?
That's a good. Oh man, that is like really tough. Oh boy. That's like, it's so, because I feel like I'd almost rank different sections of them. Like, I feel like overall I liked WandaVision the best, but I don't think it had like quite the resounding ending that Loki had. I mean, I feel like that left like more of a, oh wow, what's going to happen next? I mean, not that I did wonder what was going to happen next after WandaVision, but it definitely was like more very specific to Scarlet Witch's character, whereas like the end of Loki is like the whole Marvel universe is like what's going to happen next. But then Falcon and Winter Soldier, like I didn't care for it as much until the last few episodes. I feel like that was one that it took me a while. I was a little bored with it at the first half, and then, but then I really liked the whole message about like just how Sam Wilson like embraces being the Black Captain America. Like I felt like that was a really powerful message that really like stuck with me at the end. So it's really hard to rank like this because I feel like they were just like the episodes were so like kind of different depending on where it was. Overall, I would say I liked WandaVision. Like I got the most entertainment value out of WandaVision. And then I would say like beginning and end of Loki, I really liked. The middle was a little confusing. So I would probably overall like put that second, and then I'd probably put Falcon and Winter Soldier third. Although, like I said, I really like loved the way it ended. But all three, I mean, I really loved all three. But I guess that's how I would rank them.
Yeah, it's rough, and I think I one of the ways that I would compare them is how they ultimately handled their true villains. And the problem with Falcon and Winter Soldier in that regard is they kind of dropped the ball. Carly ended up being like this villain who you were supposed to empathize with, but never could because she does so many evil things. You have the twist that Sharon Carter is the power broker, which was a twist that we all saw coming a mile away. And then you have I can't remember his name, but Wyatt Russell's, Captain America, who
I can't remember his name.
has his sudden change of heart at the end, and it's like, where did this come from? And and for me, yes, the ending was great because the arc that Sam and Bucky take is incredible, but the rest of this, but again, the way they handle the villains was like, oh, it didn't quite work.
Maybe racism was the real villain of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
It's just the villain.
I mean, I almost feel like that was like I was more interested in that series just in the dynamic of him kind of fighting himself and being willing to like take on that mantle given what he's experienced in his life as a Black man, and that America expects Captain America to be white. Like I felt like that was kind of the compelling part of that story. Definitely not really any of the other villains so much.
And also his his conversations with I can't remember the character's name. I'm so bad at this, but the first Black Captain America.
Yeah.
Was compelling storytelling. And yeah, that was really the best part of those series was the struggle with Sam and with Bucky to really tap into their true identities. WandaVision, I wasn't disappointed with WandaVision's villain, but a lot of people were disappointed because they thought, oh, it's going to be Mephisto, it's going to be someone big. But it was Agatha all along.
Agatha's awesome.
And I love Agatha as a villain, and I really love the way they handled her. But again, a lot of people thought it was going to be someone bigger, someone truly nasty behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And that's kind of what they got with Loki. Was we got the puppet master, and again, it was exactly who we thought it was going to be, but not really. So I know a lot of people are kind of like discussing it based upon that. I would agree overall, WandaVision is probably my favorite because it, with the exception of the final episode where they kind of go into Marvel movie mode, they have their tone and they have their mystery and they have their great twists all through the entire series. And it's pretty consistent in what it's trying to be and what the story it's trying to tell about, PTSD and how do you let go of the ones you love, who you've lost.
And I can't remember, did Elizabeth Olsen get an Emmy nod for?
Yes, I believe she did.
Because I thought I saw that and I didn't go back and check, but I felt like her acting in that series was pretty amazing.
I believe that both she and Kathryn Hahn were nominated.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I would probably rank WandaVision as my favorite. I would, until the last episode, I probably wouldn't have ranked Loki number 2, but Loki had these really good bookends. Episodes 1 and 6 were just episode 1 set him up. It took him 5 episodes, but they knocked it down. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see where the MCU goes after this. And also, and we'll get to this in a minute, but where Loki himself and Sylvie are going to go. Here we are. I want to talk about Jonathan Majors and why he's important, and we kind of already covered that. We will see Jonathan Majors again in 2023 as Kang the Conqueror, his evil variant in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, unless we see him again in Loki season 2, which could happen. It seems to be implied that he has some sort of presence at the TVA now that the multiverse has split. So let's talk about the multiverse. Where do we go from here? How will this affect the MCU going forward? Well, we know 2 movies for sure. We have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It's in the title. Goodness knows what shenanigans he and Scarlet Witch are going to be up to in that multiverse. But it's going to be something. And actually 3 movies, because we know that Kang is going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But we've also got this is the event that's going to set up Spider-Man Far From Home, that is going to bring in Alfred Molina and supposedly Jamie Foxx into the fold. And they keep denying it, but they've got to do it. They've got to bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. They just got to do it.
That would be fun.
So, and also, you got to ask this question now. Going forward, are all of the MCU films and TV shows even going to take place in the same universe?
That's what I was just wondering. Like, are we gonna see a bunch of new movies, introducing new characters, and then at some point find out they're like all in different universes, and they have to somehow get into I don't know.
Well, the next movie we have coming up in September is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is an entirely new Marvel property we're dealing with here. So who's to say? Maybe Shang-Chi doesn't take place in the same timeline that we've grown accustomed to. Maybe that would explain why there is a moment we see Wong fighting the Abomination in a cage fight.
And is that the next one after that, Eternals, which is also kind of introducing a whole bunch of new characters to.
Yeah, and very little is known about that movie. The one trailer they've released so far is very cryptic. It's very beautiful, but it hasn't really revealed too much about what's going on with them, except that they have been around for seemingly all of eternity and are only now deciding that they need to get involved. Is it because the multiverse is split? Is that the moment? I mean, they literally say,
find another universe where Jon Snow and Robb Stark can be reunited.
You never know. They say in the trailer that they what do we do now? There's no more Tony Stark and no more Steve Rogers. So, do we step in now? So yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities. I mean, I've got a feeling that obviously Spider-Man: Far From Home is probably going to pick up with the same Tom Holland, Peter Parker, and Doctor Strange that we've come to know and love, while also throwing in a bunch of weird, crazy other multiverse stuff. But yeah, like anything is possible now. What if She-Hulk and Moon Knight and all those other Disney Plus shows are all in a different universe? And to set up the multiverse as your sort of big overarching phase 4 like plot device, and to also say we're going to do Secret Invasion on Disney Plus with the Skrulls. It's like they're throwing a lot of stuff at us at once, which is could be very overwhelming. So yeah, it's very exciting to see where we're at now and where we're going to be going forward.
But then I kind of also wonder, like, is it going to be something where they're not going to touch back on this for a little? I mean, because when you think about like the first Marvel movies that had little tastes of Thanos here and there, like it took a few years, like now I'm one, like, is this just something they're going to kind of touch on while they introduce all these other new characters and stuff? And then they're going to circle back to it at some point? Like,
that's also very possible. But what I hope this time around, and this show is already Loki's already kind of done that, is I would like to be able to get a greater sense of who Kang is over the course of this entire couple phases of films, so that you're not necessarily taking an entire Avengers movie to make him like the core focus and really finally dig into his character. Because, we didn't get enough of Thanos before Infinity War, and Infinity War was his story, but how much more could we have empathized with Thanos and his personal struggle if we had known more about him before that movie? Because before that movie, we really do just think of Thanos as, well, he's evil for the sake of evil.
Yeah. Well, and he's really he's kind of I would say that Infinity War is really the only movie he's really in. I mean, even Endgame, he's kind of only in a couple times.
Like, one of the reasons that most audiences still would think of Loki as the best villain in the MCU is because Loki made so many appearances over the course of the years, and was never technically killed off until Infinity War. So that you build him up as a character. So build Kang up as a character. The best villains are ones that, even if they're evil, we can empathize with them on some level, because you don't just become evil for the sake of evil. That's not fun. That's not interesting. That's how you get the Dark Elves. So here's hoping. I think that we get more Kang throughout this entire phase, and we sort of build him up as a character, even if he's not the main villain in every single movie. But yeah, let's do that. Where does Loki go next? Well, what do we know? We know that Loki is the first Disney Plus series to get a second season. WandaVision was clearly set up as a miniseries. The Falcon and Winter Soldier. Here's another way let's go back to the comparison here real quick. WandaVision was through and through. It was a miniseries. Like, it definitely felt like a one-time thing. The same can be said for Falcon and Winter Soldier, but honestly, we talked about this before, that felt like it could have been a movie. Whereas WandaVision, with its sitcom setup, it felt right at home on television. Loki is the first one to get a second series or a second season. And I think that's important because I think it makes it feel more like a television series. And maybe in the second season, we are going to get, now that we have established the TVA, now that we've gotten through all of that, we might get more time hopping shenanigans, and each episode might feel more like a television series where it doesn't all have to connect, where you can have these sort of weird one-off episodes where we'll say it's like the X-Files, where you have a Monster of the Week episode where like maybe one week Loki's just off on some planet fighting some weird monster just for funs, and it doesn't all have to be about the great grand conspiracy. Director Kate Herron is not returning for season 2, so who knows where that, who knows what's going to happen there. What are you looking forward to in season 2 of Loki?
Well, I was reading that basically where Loki ends up back at the end of that of episode 6 is like a different version of the TVA or something, so nobody recognizes him, and there's the statue is changed to like He Who Remains. So I'm wondering if part of it's going to be him like kind of trying to travel through different versions of the TVA or something. Or I hope Sylvie's back too, because I feel like there's more story to tell for her. I also feel like there's clearly more story to Judge Renslayer. I think it might also be interesting if like Owen Wilson, why can't Mobius, like it was blanking. It would be interesting if Mobius or some was looked into like who they were originally, who they were a variant of. Now that the timelines are being pruned. So I feel like there's a lot of, and I like your idea too about doing some more time hopping. I feel like there's definitely a lot of really interesting things they could do moving forward with the TVA, with the diverging timelines, with everybody being a variant. Who were they originally? Learning more about why they pruned Sylvie out of her timeline, since it was never really clear why they removed her. I feel like there's a lot of really interesting things they can do in season 2.
I like your idea of the overall story being about Loki trying to find his way back to I don't want to say his reality, because his reality is, I don't know what you call his reality, but the right reality, the reality that he would call home. The journey, we'll call it it's Star Trek for the voyage home. And also the search for Spock. It'll be the search for Sylvie. Loki needs to find Sylvie, and they need to get back home. It's gonna be really interesting, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. Hope there's more time hopping and more weird shenanigans. I hope there's Loki in the 1970s watching Jaws. I don't think that Loki and Sylvie at this point should appear in the movies. Because, and a huge part of that is because now that they have their own show, they don't need to be the guest stars in someone else's story anymore. Unless they, happen to appear in an Avengers film, fighting alongside the new heroes to defeat Kang. That might be something that happens by the time we get to that point. But again, it's time for Loki to grow as a character outside of not only the influence of Thor, but the influence of all the heroes that he has traded punches with. We don't need to see Loki fighting Hulk again. We all know that it's going to end badly for him. Would you be interested in seeing Loki and Sylvie appear in the movies in some capacity?
I think I agree with I felt like I could see them, when they eventually get to like whatever their next version of Infinity War Endgame is, wherever that happens down the line. I think it might be fun for them to hop in somewhere. Or maybe they could have maybe it would make sense that there could be some movie they'd have a fun little quick cameo in or something if it somehow tied in with the TVA. Like maybe some other movie, some person finds themselves in the TVA and see Loki like at a desk in the background or something. But so like an Easter eggy appearance. But yeah, I agree. I think especially since we know Loki's series is continuing, I feel like if they're going to come back in the movies, it should be a big event movie, like the next version of Endgame or something.
And I will take that back. I like what you said there about Easter egg stuff because some of those Easter egg appearances are great, and we're probably going to see fewer of them now as they integrate characters into each other's films more. But I do, one of the most delightful parts of Thor: The Dark World was Loki turning into Chris Evans. That's always fun. So yeah. Or when Captain America shows up as the Easter egg in Spider-Man: Homecoming with the instructional videos, those are always great. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Loki pull an Easter egg. All right, we are getting to that point where it's time to start wrapping things up. So,
it would be fun to see Loki like drop into a Shakespeare play or something, just because it would be fun to see Tom Hiddleston do some Shakespeare in the series.
and you know what we need to see Matt Damon show up as actor Loki once again.
Yes.
And I've said we can separate Loki and Thor, but we can bring back it's not Liam Hemsworth, it's the other Hemsworth brother to be actor Thor and Sam Neill as actor Odin. We can bring them all back.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So yeah, Sarah, what are your final thoughts here about Loki?
It was definitely like I feel like overall it was like not necessarily what I expected, but I don't really know what I expected. I feel like you hit it on. It's like the bookends were really amazing. It kind of went in some weird directions in the middle, but overall, I think I was pretty shocked and pleased that they used this series to like launch such a big thing that's gonna, I'm assuming, go through kind of be felt in the next like several movies and years to come. I think that's a really bold move that they put that like in one of their series. And yeah, I think they introduced a lot of interesting new characters that I think they can that I feel like I still have a lot of questions about. So I'm excited they're doing another season because I feel like there's a lot of people that are still pretty mysterious in that series, like Judge Renslayer and Sylvie, and yeah.
Yeah, for the first time, they've really sort of set themselves up to. Well, that's not true. They did do it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I'm going to be perfectly honest. The way they set up other characters to potentially return down the road in Loki, I felt was much more interesting, or at least, much more compelling. With Renslayer, and with what happened to Mobius, and with Hunter. I can't remember her name, but she was such a great character too.
Is that B?
All these
Hunter B-15.
It's B-50. It's B or C something.
Yeah.
But another great character. But like, I want to see these characters come back. I want to know more about them. I'm excited. I didn't think I was going to be this excited for a season 2 in the middle of the series because, like you said, we didn't know where this series was going to go. And I think that because this series was the most hyped, that everyone was most excited about, that may be why there was that hint of disappointment at some points, because we maybe expected the most out of it, as opposed to, oh, they're doing a goofy little show about Wanda and Vision, two characters that so far no one really cares that much about. Mm-hmm. But by the end of that series, we're like, holy crap, these characters are incredible. They've been wasted so far. And that same sense of, ooh, we're finally going to get to see Sam and Bucky in the spotlight because we've wanted to see them over the last, few years. It's like, what? And the question was, what do we want from Loki? And we really didn't know, because we kind of got a complete arc for the character already. So
I think what was also kind of weird about the Loki series is that, like, I think you said before, really, like, he wasn't really the focus of it. Like, he was still, I mean, other than I would say like that first episode, he was clearly the focus of, but he kind of still felt like the supporting character a lot of the time. If that, I don't know. Like I think you said earlier, like, was Sylvie really more of the focus of, and it kind of felt like she kind of became more the focus of the story. I mean, I would say it was really like an ensemble piece more than I was expecting.
Definitely. And there was actually, when Loki got pruned at the end of episode 4, I actually thought for a second, like, oh, okay, so this is it. This is the end of Loki's story, and the new Loki is Sylvie. And, maybe that's what the direction they're going. That being said, I'm glad that Tom Hiddleston's still around. And he seems to be game to play Loki for a long time. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I saw that he said he would keep playing Loki forever if he could.
So hopefully we'll be able to get Loki for as long as possible. All right. It is time to move on to trivia. Well, Sarah, tonight you are competing against nobody, so congratulations. There's no pressure there. Well, let's take a quick look at the scoreboard here where we're at. So in the lead, we've got Jalen and Travis at 3. You are in second place with 2. Gary, Chap, Daniel, and Andrea all have 1. And everyone else, Larice, Frank, Catherine, are not on the board yet. But hey, we still have 5 months left in this year. So anything is possible. But your question, Sarah, tonight, and I have a feeling that you're going to get this one. So,
pressure zone.
This is not the first time that Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston have appeared together in a TV show or film. Which film did Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston appear together in? Was it A, Muppets Most Wanted, B, I Saw the Light, C, Zoolander 2, or D, Midnight in Paris?
I think the answer is D.
Well, Sarah, you are correct. Midnight in Paris, in which Tom Hiddleston appeared as F. Scott Fitzgerald. Though I wouldn't have been surprised if it had ended up being Muppets Most Wanted. Tom Hiddleston appeared in that one. Would have been a perfect movie to see Owen Wilson in. Tom Hiddleston was starred in I Saw the Light with his Avengers co-star Elizabeth Olsen. And Zoolander 2 saw Owen Wilson and special guest star Benedict Cumberbatch. I thought that might throw you off. But it did not. So congratulations, Sarah. We now have a 3-way tie for first place. And you are among the top trivia performers again. Welcome back to the top.
Yay.
All right. So that is episode 32 of the Sunday Matinee. I'm hoping to get more episodes in now, get back in that groove. There will be a 2-week delay at least before the next episode, because next week, I didn't mention this at the top of the show. Yes, I'm in a live play right now, And next Sunday, we have our first big tech rehearsal, which will take us all day. And then I'm auditioning for something else that evening. So my weekend is kind of booked. So hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll be back and take a month late. It'll be a month late, but to take a look at the 25th anniversary of one of the most prominent blockbusters of the 1990s, Independence Day. Yeah. So hopefully we'll catch you then. Sarah, thank you for joining me tonight to talk about Loki. Gary couldn't be here tonight. Gary had some pressing business. Jalen could also not be here. Jalen is also in a live show. He is up in Seattle performing A Midsummer Night's Dream. That's in one of the parks, as I recall, and it is free. So if you are a fan of Jalen on this show, go check out A Midsummer Night's Dream, because he also is one of us crazy theater folk and is quite fun to watch on stage. So that's our show for tonight. Thank you, Sarah, and everybody. Until next time, have a good night.